All right, and you've got it recording. Perfect. So
Yes.
as Natasha said, we are recording. It will be for training and sharing with people who are involved in Thriving Earth Exchange projects only. And we will make that link available to you via YouTube in a follow-up email. So if you don't want to be recorded, just turn your video off. And otherwise, welcome to the Thriving Earth Exchange and our community leader orientation. I'm Erin Gleason. I'm the program manager for policy and engagement, and this cohort is my particular responsibility, but I'm joined by the rest of the team, in particular, Natasha Udugama, who has been talking to you. She's the program manager for international and community engagement, and she is your key point of contact for anything, any issues, any questions that come up. She's your go-to person. So with that, I'd like to dive into an icebreaker. And for this, I think I'm going to stop sharing, but I'd like everybody to share your name and the community that you represent here today, and then tell us something fun and unique about your community so that we can have a little something to remember that particular community by. I'll start. I'm Erin Gleason. I'm in Washington, D.C., and at least one of my communities, to not use Washington, D.C. as an example, is Tucson, Arizona. And everybody remembers Tucson, Arizona because we have saguaros. So I'm going to popcorn this over, and I'd like to ask everybody to popcorn this question forward to Anne.
All right, hi everyone. I'm Ann Moriarty and I live in Pinole, California, which is in the Bay Area across the bay from San Francisco. And our community is unique because we have a creek that is one of the only creeks in the bay that still has anadromous steelhead that can make it up to the upper watershed. So swimming fish.
Yep.
All right, and I'll pass it on to Raj.
Hi, my name is Raj Pandya. I work for the Thriving Earth Exchange. I grew up in a town called Rockford, Illinois, in northern Illinois, and one of the things that's famous, or well, maybe not famous, but one of the pieces of history that people forget about Rockford and is starting to be really rediscovered and celebrated is that one of the original founders of Rockford, Illinois was African American, and it's one of the few towns in Illinois that was founded by an African American.
Nice.
I will popcorn it over to Michelle, please.
Hey. I am with John and Kathy, so I'm going to popcorn back to them, but I'll just explain a little bit for me because we're in the same group. We represent the American Venice in Lindenhurst, New York, which is on Long Island. We are a historic town and community, not even town, but community. We are modeled after Venice, Italy, which is extremely interesting. It was done almost 100 years ago. We're coming up on to our 100-year anniversary. At the head of our community is a marina, and they have two, I don't know if everybody's familiar with the St. Mark's Lions from Venice, Italy, but we have two of those lions that we're working on getting restored. Our marina is also being restored. We still have historic houses within the community. We are in a unique community probably in all of Long Island because have little canals that were dug out by the developers that created these 5 different quadrants. 4 of them are occupied with houses, and the 5th one, which is about 88 acres or so, remains undeveloped because the community had the developers, it was at the time of the market crash, remember the great stock market crash, so they never finished developing it. I was bringing up that we had a marina at the top of our presence, and we have 2 main roads called East and West Riviera that go all the way into community. We have historic bridges that were just done by Gosser from Sandy's damage, because we were a community that was damaged in Superstorm Sandy, which we're going on the 8-year anniversary. So those bridges also modeled by the famous Venice Bridge. And the project that got us involved with you guys is at the end of our Grand Canal, which I will now popcorn over to John and Kathy.
Sorry,
Long story.
Yeah, well, Michelle just about covered everything, but she left out the most important aspect. We are a drinking community with a fishing problem. On the shore here, we are all boaters, and we love the water. So, anything we can do to protect the water and save the water is first and foremost on in our minds. Kathy?
Correct. And yes, and the resiliency of our lovely community is very important, especially after surviving the Sandy.
Yes.
It was horrific here. And in fact, I totally lost my home. I have since rebuilt, and we're stronger than ever. And it brought out the best of our community, our neighbors. We are just a very tight knit community that everybody watches out for everybody. It's beautiful down here. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Very cool.
Thank you.
You gotta pick somebody there.
Oh, I'm picking.
Yes.
Okay, who do we want to pick? Who, Sophia?
Maybe.
Get a turn the
Hi,
mic on.
everybody.
There
Is
we
that
Oh, yeah. Yep.
You know what? I'm having to rename my, I don't know why it's coming up Sophia. I think somebody used my computer.
It was
And her name
probably
is
Sophia.
Yeah. I'm just realizing that. And so let me rename myself correctly. My name is Lisa Cuestas. So there you go. That's my name.
Oh,
All right.
okay, Lisa.
that was my colleague. We had a meeting together, and I think she used Zoom as the host, so that's what happened. But hello, good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Lisa Cuestas. I am from the community of San Isidro, which is very close to the border, right across from Tijuana. And so San Isidro is a community population of about a little over 30,000. And one interesting fact about San Isidro is that it is annexed by the city of San Diego. However, it is 13 miles removed from the city of San Diego. So there are 3 other cities between San Isidro and the city of San Diego, of which we are a part of. So one of the challenges that's great, right? But at the same time, that one of the challenges is not always being seen as a community that gets the same kind of investment and priority as does downtown city of San Diego. And so we have a beautiful community with a vibrant Latino, Mexicano, and Filipino culture. But at the same time, we have severe challenges. We have air quality because of the 4, 5, 6, and 7 poor air quality wait times that we have at the border, right? Even right now. And water quality is, I can sympathize with being so concerned with water quality. Water quality is a huge concern from us, with a lot of runoff from poor infrastructure at the border and goes into our estuary and beaches. But at the same time, we have this gift of wonderful weather and beautiful sunny San Diego, and being able to go cross into Mexico and take advantage of beautiful culture there and geography and landscape. So we are really, really blessed to be in such a special part of the world, but also have some real challenges to hopefully be able to begin to address with this group.
Beautiful.
I can pass it over to Alejandro, who's part of my team, and he will introduce himself.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Alejandro, and I think Lisa covered a lot of interesting facts of San Isidro. And one of the interesting facts that I can add is that to annex San Diego had to purchase like 3 feet of land through the shoreline so it could be connected to our community. So yeah, little interesting fact. And I will pass it over to Serena, which is also part of our team.
Hi, I'm Serena, and I also represent San Isidro. One fun fact that I have about our organization is that there is a vernal pool in San Isidro that we are trying to incorporate into the design of a community park, a much needed community park. And I will pass it on to Brooke.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Brooke White, and I'm coming from Columbus, Ohio. Apologies, I was a bit late to join the call. So let's see, this is Columbus, Ohio. Something that's unique about our community in terms of thinking about some of the work that I'm doing in air quality is that we're a very rapidly growing community. So a lot of the rest of Ohio and other Ohio cities are actually shrinking. But Columbus is growing really, really rapidly. And it's kind of it's a city that feels kind of like a teenager, like sometimes kind of an awkward teenager. And so I think we're all turning around and trying to figure out how do we grow well and grow smart rather than just growing and dealing with lots of things afterhand. What can we learn from other places that have similarly undergone this really rapid growth? So, and I'll pass it on to, have we heard from Raj yet?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not sure. Sorry, because I joined a bit late in the game.
No problem.
We haven't heard from. Meredith?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi. First of all, I would like to say to Liz and the group in San Ysidro, I used to work down there in the MAC project, for the MAC project. I don't know if you all know of the MAC project, but I ran the energy department for them. So I know them. I know San Ysidro, National City, Chula Vista very, very well. So it's good to see you on this call for sure. And I support you and relate to what you're saying. So my name is Meredith Knoll, and I'm here in Monterey. I moved north of San Diego years ago. And in a word, my project is fire mitigation. I think if you watched any news channel at all whatsoever over the last couple of weeks, I think you'll be able to relate. And I wrote a proposal to Thriving Earth Exchange in February. And from then until now, we've had a really devastated fire here in close to the area. With the grace of God, it didn't hit the area that I wrote in my proposal about, but we need all the help we can get for sure, for sure. Mm-hmm. So my proposal is all about fire mitigation, putting a microscope on what has been done and what can be done, and taking a fresh eye here, because the pictures told the story. I don't have to say too much.
Very sad.
Yeah, we see it on the news every night. It's sad.
Very devastating.
You're in our thoughts.
Say?
I said, we see it on the news every night. It's very sad. We see what's going on out there, but you're all in our thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Keep us in your hearts as well.
Definitely.
Heads and hearts together. Yeah. It's a lot of spirit here, and a lot of devastation, quite frankly, a lot of loss for a lot of people.
Yes.
So again. So I have a lot of hope for sure that this science fellow will show us the way to a degree. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can you popcorn it over to somebody who hasn't gone? This gets more challenging as we go on. It's like a game of memory.
Oh, I don't know who hasn't gone on, because I came in late, actually.
How about Amber? Sorry, randomly.
Perfect.
Hi, so I'm Amber Bismack. I represent Hamburg Township in Michigan. We are a little bit north of Ann Arbor, if you happen to know the Michigan Wolverines. And so we come from a state actually that has worked really hard to clean up the waterways in Michigan, which is exciting. So as a state, I would say what's interesting is that they have worked on cleaning up the waterways in the process, found lots of PFAs, so that's still around. But what we haven't addressed, which is our project, which is increasing flooding in our area. In our community alone, we flood between 1 and 5 times a year. And that's created a lot of problems for many community members. And the response from our township has been, we've done everything we can and there's nothing else. And so we are here to see what else, other support we can get and what we can learn from other people to try and minimize the flooding that we have going on. And so I will actually popcorn it over to my other community leader partner, Diane. Oh, maybe Diane stepped away. So instead, I will, let's see, I will find someone else. I'm trying to figure out who hasn't gone. Alejandra, have you gone?
Yeah, I went.
I apologize. Oh, I see. Okay, I apologize. I'm probably gonna mispronounce your name. Queen Quiet?
Queen Quet.
Quit. Okay, I apologize.
It's okay. We're glad for day with all the 100 children and things like that. May the Queen Quet head pun the body of the Gullah Geechee Nation. So if 100 Yeti were unique to me, this year wasn't unique. I glad for Yeti that y'all asked this year. So if you want to know what's unique, I think you just heard it. It is the Gullah language, okay, that is here in the Gullah Geechee Nation, and I live on the Sea Islands, and the Gullah Geechee Nation encompasses all of them from Jacksonville, North Carolina to Jacksonville, Florida, and then 30 to 35 miles inland to the St. Johns River. What else is unique is that we have dual citizenship. I'm actually the head of state for the Gullah Geechee Nation. And so we have dual citizenship in the Gullah Geechee Nation and in the United States. And our issue that we'd like to work on with Thriving Earth, or will be working on with you all at Thriving Earth Exchange, is of course dealing with what you see surrounding me, right? As an island girl, what else would I have? Water. And we need to have the water tested, in particular in areas that the local governments and state governments list as
All right, you need to turn it down to 11.
Fishing areas. But then, and I heard some other fishing folks here, I'm so glad to see you. And so they list it as areas that the public can go out and fish from public docks. But then our research has shown that some of those waterways are the ones that have been contaminated, and that could potentially be Superfund sites. So we want to have the scientific research to back what is actually in the water based on a Gullah Geechee Fishing Association atlas we did of public docks. And so we want to test that water and compare it where why these signs here saying go on out there, you know, if these things have PCBs and other things in the water. And so we definitely want to try to maintain our water quality, because by maintaining our water quality, we maintain our qualities of life here. And so we so glad for Dia, and as we say, the water to bring we, the water going to take we back. So that's just another unique thing. We have many proverbs here in the Gullah Geechee Nation. So glad to be with all of you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Queen Quet. Can you popcorn it over, memory permitting,
Yeah,
to somebody who hasn't gone yet?
I was putting the glasses on because I wanted to see it, because she moved. I had somebody in mind. There she is. And because my last name is Goodwine and people mispronounce it all the time, I'm popcorning it over to Melissa, who has the last name people try to give me.
Hi, I am Melissa Goodwin. So Goodwin is not the last name I was given at birth. I took it when I got married, and my last name used to be Montagna, and I was like really excited, like Goodwin, no one can mess that up, right? And now I get like Goodman, like I get everything. So there's no winning. I'm Thriving Earth Exchange staff. I'm from, I live in Gaithersburg, Maryland right now, originally from Mountainside, New Jersey, which is what I'll share a fun fact with you all about. We are a very, very small town in north central New Jersey, small enough that we didn't have our own high school. So we went to the one next door, Governor Livingston High School, home of the Highlanders. And GL, as we call it, was known for its marching band, which had extensive use of bagpipes. And it's also the same school that Peter Sagal, host of NPR's Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, the news quiz, went to as well. So has not helped me get on the show yet, but there's hope still. I will popcorn it over to Brian, have you gone yet?
I have not. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are. My name is Brian Devine. I am a public health worker in Durango, Colorado. We're in the southwest corner of the state, close to the Four Corners Monument. And my public health agency covers 2 counties for some types of things and 3 counties for other types of things down here in the San Juan Mountains in southwest Colorado. Something unique about our community is we're one of the few communities in the United States that still has a coal-powered train running on its original tracks using original equipment. It was on the old mining railroad between Durango and Silverton, and now it's a tourist railroad using original coal-fired steam engines. I will pop it over to Kelly. I don't think we've heard from Kelly yet.
Thanks, Brian. My name's Kelly McCarthy. Hi, everyone. I'm also Thriving Earth Exchange staff. And I am from a town called Shamokin Coal Township in the coal region of Pennsylvania. So a similar fun fact or unique fact to Brian's communities. In our area, we actually have been the subject of documentaries over the past couple decades, and in some cases a tourist attraction because of an unfortunate event that happened in the 60s. There's an underground mine that's been burning since 1962 in a nearby town called Centralia. Even to this day, it no longer has a zip code, but it's kind of a neighboring community to us, and a lot of folks that are now my neighbors grew up in that area before the fire. But a cool fact from that is since then we've done a lot of water restoration work related to the impacts of mining in our community. So that's been a positive outcome. And I will popcorn to Lauren. Have we heard from Lauren yet?
Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm with the Kiamichi River group, or with Antlers. Okay. I'm in with sorry, I'm in the same room as one of the other people who is helping out with this as well. And we're focused on the Kiamichi River and just trying to, there's like 2 major like water projects for the river. And so we're really interested in getting the community involved in doing science on the river and getting scientists to sort of help figure out like best hydrology practices for the river in case like these 2 major projects do go through and impact like water quality. So we're looking forward to working with Thriving Earth Exchange. And I will popcorn to Kenneth Roberts, who's also involved with the Kiamichi River.
Hi, thank you all. I hope you can see me. I'm Kenneth Roberts. I'm a professor at the University of Tulsa and Lauren's research advisor. And so, yes, she and I have been talking a lot about how this could benefit a big problem. I mean, I know we're all here with big problems of trying to protect water and other things, but southeastern Oklahoma is where our struggle is at, and it's the poorest part of Oklahoma, and it's pretty rural, but there are some extremely high quality river systems that are in peril. There's plans to take what is currently a high quality water system and pipe it across state to the urban center of Oklahoma City. And so we're severely trying to get the hydrology understood better. And so we're hoping that's an angle anyway, that we still here are very backwards. I want to say that without totally deprecating, because I am from Oklahoma, but it is very true that right now, as probably most places, water is thought of as a commodity, and how it could best make some money. And if it can make money, then that's the only hurdle it must cross. So it's a basically big giant Goliaths of Oklahoma City versus, we're the David trying to fight against all their resources. And a big part of it is no one really understands the hydrology because it's so rural, so sort of forgotten about, that no one has ever really done it. So we're trying to establish some scientific evidence that would suggest these ideas are not good, and that they have a long-term, not only environmental impact, but I'm also trying to convince them that there is a long-term economic deficit that is incurred when you make a little money today or in the next 10 years and then spend the next 100 years trying to reclamate the damage caused by that 10 years worth of money. And the reclamation costs are always more than the money gained by selling off the natural resource in the beginning. So, but thank you all, and love the opportunity, and looking forward to talking more about this and continuing on. So this is my first Zoom meeting, so I'm not really sure how to popcorn anybody.
You just have to think of who hasn't spoken yet, and you're almost last, so this gets tough.
Well, yes, I think, did Brian Zattini speak?
He has not.
Okay,
Brian,
I
know you're having some trouble.
I'm popping your corn. I'm not sure.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
We can.
We usually have to go to Arkansas.
Yeah, my government issued Chromebook is not exactly doing well today, so I had to call in because I got dropped before. Basically, I work for the town of Babylon, DEC. My township is where Michelle and the American Venice community is located. I'm the town flood manager, and 15 other hats that I wear at the local level. And basically, we're supporting Michelle and her civics on their resiliency issues, which is shared by most of our township that borders our bay and our wetland areas. As she mentioned before, we're 8 years out of Hurricane Sandy. We were one of the hardest hit communities on Long Island in Sandy. We still have several hundred homes that have not been upgraded or are not occupied. So something of a long haul still ahead of us, which we're still trying to work on, picking up the pieces and mitigation for future storm events. And I don't know if anybody's left.
How about Allie? I think hasn't gone yet.
Allie Ringhausen. I am with Great Rivers Land Trust. I'm their executive director. And we are in the Midwest. We're in Illinois, down in southern Illinois. And what's unique about our part of the world is it's an area where a number of major rivers all come together as a confluence region. We have the Illinois River coming into the Mississippi, and just a few miles downstream of that, we have the Missouri River meeting up with the Mississippi, and then a number of miles downstream, we have the Ohio coming in. But in our area, it's unique in that the Mississippi runs east and west instead of north and south. And we have these 200-foot limestone bluffs that come down to the river. And the tops of these bluffs have these unique prairies that have a lot of threatened and endangered species. But also along with the rivers, we have a lot of wetlands. And a lot of these wetlands have been farmed for a lot of years. And we've been working to try and convert them back to a natural wetland. And so our project is trying to identify and then prioritize which of these wetlands have the greatest value if they were converted back to their natural setting.
Very good.
And then I'm trying to think if there's anybody. I think, did we hear from John, who looks like he's on phone line only, John Garino? Maybe.
Hi, I'm it's actually Joe Guarino, not John. I work at the same municipality as Brian, town of Babylon. I'm a environmental analyst, also a CFM. We navigated through Sandy, as Brian indicated. We're a town of about 200,000. We considered suburban, but we're probably larger than many cities. And, you know, we're here to listen in and see if we could support Michelle and her group. And I really don't know who hasn't gone, so I could use some help with that.
Thank you.
Okay, Itzel.
There we go.
Hi everyone, my name is Itzel. I'm working as an environmental educator with high school students here in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I'm working with students at Pinole Valley High School this year, and so I'm just really excited to get our youth involved in some of the projects that we're working on. Our students are super concerned about litter issues in the community and trying to keep our watersheds healthy, and so I frequently have them go out and do water quality testing on our local creek. So I'm excited to have that partnership with the fellow and get them connected with the scientists so they can also start to learn all about environmental science and hopefully pursue a career in this field. So I'm just really excited to get our youth involved this year. I don't know if I was the last person or if there's anyone else. I think Diane.
Yeah, Natasha and I think Diane and Anne on the phone. But we'll let Natasha go, and then if Diane or Anne can unmute themselves as soon as Natasha is done.
I'll just, everyone, I'm Natasha Utagama, also Thriving Earth Exchange team. Happy to see all of you and learn all about your amazing communities. I grew up in a town called Newport News, Virginia, and Newport News is known for its shipbuilding. It's also named Newport News because Christopher Newport brought the news to this part of the country. And so there's a university also named for him as well. So it's a news-making kind of town that has a shipbuilding. I will popcorn it over to Diane if you're still able to, unmute yourself and introduce yourself, that would be great. Thank you.
Hey, my name is Diane. Henry, I live with Amber. We're in Michigan. We have a lot of water in Michigan, if you know that. And we're trying to get a handle on our flooding situation. We have a lot of water that comes through here, through our lake, through our neighborhoods. And we're trying to get the township to understand that. So I look forward to working with that part of it. And whoever is going to go next, I don't know who that was.
The last one, yeah, the last one is Anne, and that's actually Anne from Pinole. I've got my computer on Zoom and my phone on Zoom, so you've got me twice.
Great.
We're done.
Awesome. Well, give me just a moment to share my screen again, and we will get back to the presentation. So our goal today is just to get everybody on the same page. We will be finishing off the fellows orientation, the fellows who will be working with each of your communities this Friday, and next Monday you'll all receive an email introducing your fellow to your community. So we want to make sure that you guys are fully understand fully what's about to happen, that you understand the same thing that the fellows understand, and that you have a chance, first of all, to get to know each other, and second of all, to ask any questions. So I'll just jump into the next slide here. So where are we right now as of Monday, whatever the date is today? First of all, you know that earlier in the year, the application for this particular cohort was actually meant to happen a lot sooner. COVID happened, and we moved that application deadline to June, which kind of gave everybody, including ourselves, a chance to just kind of go, okay, COVID's here, this is how we're going to deal. And we were really excited to get a lot of applications. And COVID actually gave us the chance to answer all of those applications. This cohort was originally meant to be for 8 communities, 8 fellows, because there was rather an expensive element of bringing all our fellows to DC for their training. And COVID kind of forced us to jump ahead and really switch to an online mode of training our fellows for this experience. And we were able to open up to meet all the communities that had applied. So in May through July, we were pre-scoping with you all. You remember those phone calls, just making sure, first of all, that you understood what Thriving Earth Exchange is about, and second of all, that you are representative of your community's interests. At the same time, we are interviewing fellows, and by July 20th, we had a cohort put together. From July through August, we were doing that switch, that transition from a very in-person mode of training our fellows to a combination of self-paced online work, and later this week will be an in-person online finalization of that preparation of the fellows. So they began their work, their self-paced work, on September 1st. They've been working on that ever since, and I can tell you, you are going to be working with a very smart group of people. They're very excited, at least as excited as you guys. So I think you're really going to have fun with this. This Friday, they kind of graduate, if you will, and as I said, next Monday, you'll be receiving an introduction from me or Natasha, introducing you to the fellows. And from that point forward, it's up to you and your fellows to arrange a date to talk and to start what we call scoping. And Natasha will take you through our process, which is represented by this wheel here, and explain what to look forward to in the coming months.
Thank you, Erin. So just as a quick refresher, AGU is an international association of more than 60,000 advocates and experts in earth and space science. Of those, 53% of them are international in 137 countries, including the United States. Through our initiatives such as mentoring, professional development, and awards, AGU members uphold and foster an inclusive and diverse scientific community. AGU also hosts numerous conferences, including the largest international earth and space science meeting, as well as serving as the leading publisher of the highest quality journals. Fundamental to our mission since our founding in 1919 is to live our values, which we do through our net zero energy building in Washington, DC. Additionally, we make scientific discoveries and research accessible and engaging to all in order to help protect society and prepare global citizens for the opportunities and challenges ahead. Next slide, please. So Thriving Earth Exchange is a program of AGU that fosters these partnerships between communities like yours and scientists to advance local priorities through an approach known as community science. Our mission is therefore to strengthen and enhance collaboration among communities, scientists, and partner organizations so that all communities can build healthy, resilient, thriving, just, and ecologically responsible futures. I know that slide just jumped ahead, so I'll get as quick as my slide, which is that Thriving Earth's vision is to be a leader in contributing to global well-being by supporting communities' awareness and application of science, promoting equity by ensuring that all communities benefit from the opportunity to participate in, contribute to, and guide the use of scientific knowledge. Next slide, please. So Thriving Earth Exchange defines community science as the process by which scientists and communities do science together to advance one or more community priorities. It encourages communities, particularly those historically marginalized and oppressed communities, to guide, participate in, learn from, and benefit from science. Community science is designed to make a tangible local impact, and when done well, it can enhance community capacity, advance equity, and build public trust and support for science. In this context, science is understood to be an inclusive suite of activities encompassing research, engagement, education, synthesis, and application, nested in a range of intersecting disciplines and ways of knowing with diverse cultural roots. So community science has several fundamental core values. First, community voice always comes first. All projects start from community interest, not scientific research agendas. Then, all communities deserve access to science to advance their priorities. Communities deserve the opportunity to ask questions about issues that matter most to them and be able to obtain the right type of science and scientists who are willing to work with them and understand their culture, context, and priorities. Then science is a tool to help drive solutions. Science is one tool amongst many to help advance feasible tools and solutions that work well with community knowledge, know-how, and capacity towards substantive community impact. Short-term, immediate impact seeds long-term culture of community science. This means that community science projects do not aim to be the solution. Rather, it is a stepping stone towards a larger solution and instills an equitable way for community knowledge and science to come together. Next slide, please. So before we get into the process, I just want to give you a sense of what a community science project team looks like. So community leader, you bring that community knowledge, insights, and connections. You represent and speak on behalf of the community. You engage widely within the community and ensure that the project is responsive to community priorities and is relevant to the community and impactful within that community. The community scientist will bring scientific knowledge, insights, and connections. These folks will engage as representatives of the scientific community, and they will ensure that science is relevant, responsive, and meaningful for your community priorities. And then finally, the community science fellow. Last but certainly not least, this person will be your project manager and will guide your team through the process, ensuring communication and coordination, primarily be that connecting point to the Thriving Earth Exchange network, team, and resources, and will be responsible for recruiting your scientist or scientists. So just to let you know that projects within the Thriving Earth Exchange are networked, but they usually function very independently of each other, although you all are working within the realm of a cohort, the Science Policy and Engagement cohort. The minimum is of one participant for each. There's always one fellow, and we recommend at least 2 community leaders, and in some cases you have multiple, which is amazing. And then scientists tend to be variable between 1 and 5. As staff, our role is to provide structure and support for these projects. And it's the team, the project teams, the fellow, the community leaders, and the scientists who basically carry out the projects. Next slide, please.
Hello. Hold on. I think it's going to jump ahead 5 now.
Okay. Okay, so just to get back into that wheel that Erin mentioned before, in our first phase, scope, all projects start in this phase. In Thriving Earth Exchange, we begin by connecting your communities to our science by having a series of conversations, usually by phone, more and more often by Zoom, less and less in person, to understand your priorities around climate change, natural hazards, and natural resources issues. The end of this step culminates in the development of a fully developed project description. Scoping is the stage in which your fellow will work with your community to develop your top priority into an actionable project that also matches well within much of the scientific expertise in our AGU Geoscience network. As community leaders, your role is to be available for at least 3 scoping calls for approximately 1 hour each. Then reviewing and iterating on the project description draft with your fellow until it is finalized. Your fellow's role is to schedule times for scoping calls and developing a draft project description and iterating with you until that is final. Based on our current timeline for fellow training happening later this week, as Erin mentioned, you will be connected with your fellow by next Monday, September 28th, such that scope will likely occur between October and November of this year. Next slide, please. Once you've completed the scoping phase, you move on to match. And match is all about building a project team. So using the project description that you finalize with your fellow will begin the search for a scientist match to find the right community scientist candidate with the appropriate mix of community science expertise and interest, time, and soft skills to work well with you and your community. And when I say soft skills, it's that sense of humor, it's that ability to work with people. We do have those types of scientists. In order to find the right candidates, we use AG databases as well as past contacts, Google searches, and etc. to find those suitable matches that are typically local, but oftentimes based on your request to your community. As community leaders, your role is to be patient. Matching can take up to 2 months depending on your fellows' availability. Be timely as much as possible in your review and selection of those community scientist recommendations once you receive them from your fellow, and provide any necessary clarification to the fellow about your preferences, if applicable. Your fellow's role is to search for an appropriate community scientist candidate or candidates. They will then interview those community scientist candidates and obtain references for potential candidates. Once those references clear, they will then provide you with recommendations and give you the opportunity to select the candidates that seem to be the best fit based on the recommendation summary and your preferences. Next slide, please. So we're not going to go too deep into the next couple of phases, but the third phase is solve, and we'll get into a deeper dive a little later on once you're into the process. But solve is all about doing your 6 to 18-month project or any variation in between. And in this phase, you'll be working with your community science fellow and the community scientist that you have selected to develop a project plan and realize those milestones that you have co-created. So considering our timeline right now, solve will most likely occur by early 2021. And then last but certainly not least is share. And on the left-hand side of your screen, you see this new graphic, which is very new in that it now shows share not as a separate phase, because share occurs throughout all phases of our approach. And share is all about sharing the highlights, the milestones, the results, and the outcomes throughout all phases of your Thriving Earth Exchange project. Next slide, please. So before I get into the tips for all of you savvy community leaders, are there any questions about our Thriving Earth Exchange community science process? Meredith.
The question that came up while I was watching this, which is really excellent, would this PowerPoint slide be available for us to show our cohorts? I've got a group of 12 to 15 people in the community locally here who are very susceptible to fires that are very interested, and I think your outline would be excellent to share instead of putting it in my words.
Sure, I'm happy to share it with you. Okay. And just so you know, Meredith, this is also being recorded. So if that's of interest to you, you can have the recording as well. Not to be shared further than your teams, but
correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I have a question. Let's say that you're talking about, community scientists. Let's say that, we have a lot of scientists out east. Like, what if you know some, or if you've worked with some in the past? Would they be able to be part of the conversation?
Great question, Michelle. Certainly, if you have pre-existing relationships with some scientists that you have worked with before and you've established some really good relationships with, feel free to suggest those names to your fellow, and they will include that in their search.
Thank you.
Meredith.
I have another quick question. The science fellow that will be here working with fire mitigation for Monterey County or Carmel Valley, will they actually physically live here, be here, or will it all be virtual?
Meredith, all of our fellows will most likely be working virtual, especially at this time. It's unlikely, and I'm not sure, Erin, you might want to speak to this more specifically for Meredith about her specific fellow, but our fellows will essentially be liaising with you remotely for the time being.
Yeah, I think that's all we'll say at this point until we know more about COVID. Your fellow, Meredith, is actually located pretty close and has a background in fire science. I think we're just gonna have to play by ear depending on what happens, what unfolds over the next months.
Okie doke, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other burning questions before I move on? All right, excellent. You'll have more time for questions, so. So just a few tips that have been gleaned from some of our over 100 community leaders we've worked with in the last 6 years. First of all, a prepared and respectful scientist will create an open and inviting space for you all to ask your questions and raise any doubts. So don't be afraid to ask questions to ensure a topic or an item is understandable, and also be open to questions from both your scientist and your community science fellow. Because oftentimes, and I can definitely attest to this, there are times when you all know your community context and these issues in so much depth that even your scientist or your fellow might not necessarily know. So just keep that in mind, to be open to questions and be able to ask those questions. Next slide, please. So pause to self-reflect along the way. Is the project meeting everyone's expectations? And if not, have you built in enough flexibility to change course? So engage in action with reflection. Next slide, please. If you're not already deeply connected with the larger community in this way, connecting the work of a community science project through community meetings or forums will help build a transparency and trust with those benefiting from the results of the community science project. Next slide, please. So scientists and community members may operate with differing cultural norms, expectations, and ways of expressing yourselves. Make sure you're on the same page and in agreement when you chart out a collaboration's purpose, desired outcomes, and expected involvement. For instance, timeframes, deadlines, and capacities. Set clear and measurable goals for each team member from the start of the project and outline team roles and assigned tasks. Schedule frequent check-ins with your teammates to discuss progress made towards achieving those desired outcomes. And be honest about your capabilities and don't be afraid to ask for help. Next slide. So the results from a community science project may not always be what you as community leaders anticipate as the outcome. Be prepared to base any action on the scientific evidence that you receive from your scientists and not on any political agendas. So base your action on evidence. All right, over to you, Erin.
All right. So this cohort is different. Most of our cohorts are run directly with AGU funding. This one is funded by the Moore Foundation, and the official name is quite a bit longer. It's the Building Enduring Grassroots Constituency for Science project between us and the Moore Foundation. But for the public-facing purposes, it's the Science Policy and Engagement cohort. So you might hear us referring to it as the SPEC cohort occasionally, and I apologize when we slip into that jargon, but that's what we're referring to. And our mandate with this particular grant is to really build up that policy and engagement part of the projects. Because it's great to do the science, but once you have science, what do you do with it? And that's really where the impact of the science comes in, is by engaging, by talking with policymakers, and by perhaps trying to change policy. So this language is taken directly out of the grant, and I apologize for that, but I wanted to put this in here so you could see exactly what our communication with our funder was when we proposed this. And as you'll see, it says there's the projects, there would be 8 projects in communities around the US. And as I said at the beginning, one of the bright sides of COVID is that it's actually kind of forced us to change our program in a way that has allowed us to more than double the size of the cohort, which is something I am very excited about personally, as everybody keeps hearing about, probably more than they want to. The main part that I want you to understand from this is that the goal is to improve the capacity of communities and community leaders to continue to use science, and scientists to self-advocate and develop sustainable and community-led solutions to community challenges. Again, this is all grant language. What we really want for you guys at the end of this is that you understand where to find a scientist, how to engage with them, and feel empowered to do that on your own if you want to go forward with a different project or another phase. More grant language is here. These are our outcomes that we listed in that proposal. And just to emphasize, we really want at the end of this for you as community leaders to understand and be able to talk about the value of science. We want scientists who are equipped with the skills and the savvy to work with communities. We know scientists tend to have a bad reputation for being kind of stuck in their ivory towers and having a lot of really great knowledge in their head that might not be communicated so well in a way that most of the rest of the world can use it. And we want to help lead a shift in science as a whole towards science that is really very based in society, that is very applicable to society. And as part of that, we're developing what we call here in grant language, a set of descriptive materials and collateral that support local leaders. What this means is that we're getting templates for things like op-eds or policy engagement letters prepared so that when you are ready to do that, we're not starting from ground zero. You have something to start with, you understand the process, and we have a system built that can help guide you through that. So it's much less of an effort and you have much easier time engaging with the media, with policymakers, and with your broader community. So this cohort is different. Typically, everybody involved in the projects, from fellows, community leaders, and scientists, are all pro bono. This is still the case with this project, but this time, the Moore Foundation has made microgrants available to support community project and engagement. So we're going to ask you at the end and in a follow-up questionnaire how you think you might want to use that funding. We're still developing how exactly we'll be deploying it, but there are microgrants available to help make those projects happen, to make sure that the people who need to be involved can be involved, and to overcome those sort of barriers. We will also have the support from other programs and departments within the AGU, including public affairs, media relations, and sharing science. They will be helping us develop a lot of the tools and materials that you'll be using later on. They'll be helping us provide workshops to you all and to provide tailored training. So if you want to do something very specific with your community related to affecting policy, we will be working with public affairs to make sure that you have the tools and knowledge to be able to do that. Which bleeds into this next bullet, tailored training to support your efforts to engage with the broader public, the media, and policymakers. We want these projects to be impactful. Again, it's great to have science, but you need to be able to take that science forward in some way. And how you do that is you engage with the broader community, the media and policymakers, to really get people to care about what you're working on and to be able to want to make a difference. Similarly, we are working on developing partnerships with other organizations and with members of other organizations, such as the American Political Science Association, to help bring additional expertise beyond just the geosciences. That's definitely a to be announced sort of thing, but we have at least partnerships with individuals and other organizations who are very interested in helping provide expertise related to their specific discipline. So ultimately, our goal for this cohort is to support scientists and communities to continue to do science community partnerships and increase awareness and support of science and its role in the well-being of communities. And over the next 6 to 18 months, or however long your projects take, and that will depend very much on your specific context and your project teams, your fellows will be interacting with the Thriving Earth Exchange team very often. Their whole cohort will have monthly check-ins, and they'll also be speaking with us as individual mentors about once a month. You will be most consistently in contact with the community scientists, especially once you reach that solve stage. And your fellows will be I'm sorry, I did this opposite. As I said before, your fellows will be engaging in monthly meetings with with each other through monthly calls organized by us, and they will be interacting with you at least once a month, and particularly more during that scope and matching stages. So one of our questions for you all today is we would like to develop similar meetings for community leaders, similar monthly or every 2-month calls, or some other means of communicating with each other so you can share your experiences as community leaders. I think you'll find, as you probably already heard, that there is a lot of overlap between some of your projects, and that can be very powerful, especially if we get into questions like, do we want to write a national op-ed about flooding? So our question to you all is, would you like to have some sort of regular engagement with one another, and in what form would that happen? What would be most convenient to you? So with that, we'll open it up for Q&A, and the Q's and A's go both ways. So if you could answer our questions about how you'd like to be more involved, and if we have any answers for you for your questions. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so we can all see each other.
I'm definitely interested in keeping, at least once a month conversations amongst ourselves on our project. Absolutely.
Agreed.
Yeah. Who wouldn't be? Yeah.
And Zoom, or how do you?
This is working out fine. I mean, yeah, Zoom is. I think it's fine. Look, we got this down right today. So, yeah, I think so. Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, this is Anne from Pinole, and I also, I'm sure Itzel and I and our other 2 leaders on this team would like to get together with the other groups, but it would be helpful if they were focused, if we had, a certain goal for that meeting. And maybe the first meeting actually is just for us all to vent, which might be great, but if we had stated goals, and so that we have a focus that can keep it from just being, because a lot of us have a lot of Zoom meetings and they get really old unless they're directed. So that would be super helpful so that we could be efficient, but also really listen to each other and learn from each other. So thanks.
That's great input. Yeah.
I want to say thank you so much to Anne for pointing that out about the Zoom and being inundated with it. As a head of state, I am constantly doing interviews or having to travel or needing to be in the field. There is still a pandemic. And I'm now being asked to serve on a lot of other boards that already have a monthly Zoom meeting. So my calendar is probably not even open to being able to do anything monthly. If you said quarterly, I'd say yes, but monthly, I'm saying absolutely no, just because the time will not allow that, because you're saying we're going to also be meeting once or twice a month. It looked like twice a month with the fellow. So if I'm going to already have to schedule the fellow, I'm not going to have time to also then schedule meeting with everybody here. But if you email me details, I will respond in writing. I respond to email incessantly, but don't expect to actually see me on here on a monthly basis. It's just not feasible for my schedule at all to do that. A quarterly meeting, fine, but definitely not a monthly for me.
That's great feedback, being flat. Thank you so much. That is exactly the kind of information we're looking to get. Meredith.
Yeah, so my question is this: just forward 2 things to me, so then I could begin to forward to my committee and the CAL FIRE guys who are out fighting fires. And I'm interested in that op-ed conversation that you all had, so we can figure out how to get the word out further. Because as you can imagine, everyone here is on edge relative to fires. So if you can forward me the PowerPoint and then also the information you have put together on the op-ed, so I can begin to parallel the language and the communication style. And I love the fact that you want to grow the love for scientific thinking. I think that is an issue. I happen to be a technical lighting person, and I know I talk in, you know, lighting nerd language. So I totally get what you're saying about the love for growing the love for science in a language that is semantically heartwarming. So those are my questions. Thank you.
Perfect. We will definitely make sure you all have a copy of the PowerPoint. We're going to be sending you a very short survey, because this is actually the first time cohort-wise that we have done a community leader orientation. So we'd like to know your feedback on how helpful this has been, and then some ideas about the microgrants. So we'll make sure you have all that information for sure, Meredith. And with regard to the op-ed, that material is in production right now, and that is something that your fellows will be able to help unroll with you as you get into the, basically from next Monday. And we would like to have, if your project teams think this is strategic, some way to announce that you have this partnership beginning and send that out perhaps to your local papers as a way to start bringing the rest of the community along on this experience with you.
Right, right. Yeah, that's the idea of it, for sure. Other than Nextdoor and the local local Facebook groups, to be able to reach out to the larger community would be really helpful.
Yeah, Raj just put a link in the chat that you might be interested in, Meredith. And just to say, you mentioned Nextdoor. We are learning with you, especially with COVID shaking everything up. And this entire cohort is about learning. It's about expanding that policy and engagement piece. If you have ideas, or if you think something's not really great, or if you think something is great, please tell us, because we're learning with you throughout this entire program. We as staff, the fellows as well, I think your whole project team, it should really be seen as we are learning and evolving in this together. So
beautiful.
Tell us about Nextdoor. Tell us about the other modes of communication you use, because AGU is a science organization, and we usually talk to scientists who are on Twitter, which you might be as well, but they're not on Nextdoor. So do tell us, and we'll develop tools to accommodate that.
Oh, sure. Thank you so much. Perfect.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Okay, it's regarding media. You know, we do utilize our Facebook page, and our posts are seen a lot, you know, throughout the community. Already, we've been contacted by major news, media networks twice, 2 of them actually. So they wanted to know when we would be able to give them some kind of information and who they could talk to, so that they could in fact put it out there. And then once they do it, then we'll wind up having more contacts, because that's how this just works. So when do you think we would be able to give them a little bit more information so that they can actually run print stories and media stories?
So as of next week, you'll be able to say that you are embarking on a Thriving Earth Exchange project, and we'll give you kind of a boilerplate language. It's like 2 sentences long, explaining what that is. Perhaps a month from next week, you'll be pretty far into that scoping process that Natasha described. By the time you have a project description, that's your help wanted ad for a scientist effectively, you're gonna know what you wanna work on over this next 6 to 18 months in pretty firm detail. I will say, once your scientist comes on, they bring another set of skills, another perspective, and that might change a little bit, but you're gonna know pretty well what you're about to embark upon in that solving phase. And I think those are both 2 key moments, both to say that this partnership is happening, and next week you'll know who a key part of that project team is, apart from yourselves. And then when you actually know this is the meat of what we're going to work on, that's a good place to share. Also, as you get into solving, you bring on a scientist. That's another good milestone. And then as you achieve certain data or that sort of thing.
Yeah, so then we'll probably want to do like follow-ups, like here's part A, part B, you know. All right, that's great. So
yeah,
good, because we got contacted, so we didn't have to go out.
That's you are ahead of the game. That's wonderful. And I definitely encourage you, start early with communicating. Know who you want to communicate with and why. Because the more people you bring along on this, the more ownership there is, the more interest, the more impact.
I had a question.
Kenneth. Yeah, please.
I think a lot of, or some of my questions it sounds like I'll be learning more in the next week. So I'll save, asking you about future discussions until, we get to that point. But just to go back to something you were asking earlier about getting together as community organizers. I know we developed a 501c3 and have been building our little group. But one thing that I think we could use, beyond the science side, is ideas from each other on community engagement that we've tried. It feels like everything under the sun, and then some of it just falls flat, and some of it seems to help. And then there's fatigue from the community if you keep banging on their door. So I know an aspect that's really kind of maybe not the driving force of this program, but would help me is to hear from you all, some of the engagements, strategies that you have that work well within your community. And so that may turn into a discussion board if not everyone wants to meet, or it might be that, ideas in that regard. I mean, it may not be that somebody wants to hear about our water issue. So suggesting we come to a meeting and hear about that may not be for everybody, but I really think that it sounds like when I look around the room, I sort of see that same look on a lot of people's faces that I think's on mine, which is, this is wonderful, but it's also, a lot of learning goes into how do I, and I'm a scientist, so yeah, I get into trouble of putting people to sleep in these town hall meetings, and but other avenues and that sort of thing. Just instilling your ideas is basically the truthful way of saying it. I want you to know how to better engage the community, especially those that are sort of fence riders, that could do more, but you need to sales pitch them a little further. So that's just one little thing that I wanted to add. So I don't know how that would pan out, but I'd be very interested in hearing how you all, as community leaders, and you all in the Thriving Earth that have years of experience on this sort of thing, have seen how it worked the best.
I think you just hit the nail right on the head about what this cohort is all about.
Okay.
It is about figuring out how do we engage more broadly beyond just the science.
Yes.
So yes, absolutely. I think all of our future calls, unless there is specific ties to be made between, say, flooding communities, and then we would pull in communities from other cohorts or from our past projects. I think that is the heart of what we would be talking about, is different aspects of engaging kind of those three different target audiences: the broader community, media, and policymakers.
I really love this, and thank you again. I keep saying that, but thank you.
Oh, it's great. Okay, and just, Raj, do you want to say that out loud?
Sure. Just adding that, one of the things we heard was cohort meetings, getting all of us together again is great. Have a purpose and have a goal. That is a perfect purpose and goal for that kind of meeting. Sharing strategies, troubleshooting strategies. We can even share, do not try this at homes. I think sometimes those can be just as valuable. So thanks.
More questions, concerns, ideas, inspirations? Kelly.
Yeah, just kind of wondering about those topics that have come up so far, and just knowing people's availability on Zoom varies. Maybe we could think about setting the topic in advance, like each month set a topic a couple weeks ahead of that date and set a drop-in standing time as one option. So if folks can't make it that month, they could get the discussion later. One idea.
Yeah, you wouldn't be required to attend. I think it would work best if they were standing meetings. We were there, we had material ready to discuss, but if you can make it, great. If you can't, see you next time. Michelle, were you going to say something?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. If you have a standing meeting every month, and if you're recording it, if you can't make it, or somebody from your group, because some of us have more than one person, you know, then you can catch up with it later and maybe, you know, email questions or what have you. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, we all have tons of fun time Zoom meetings, but you know, this is important, and we all working on a, you know, something that's near and dear to us all. So,
Kathy,
I have a question. I was just wondering if you have anyone from a past project that you can connect to us with a similar situation, fire or flooding, or and maybe they could give us you know, tips on what we are going to experience since they've already experienced it.
we absolutely can. I'd say ask your fellow when you speak with them, hopefully next week, and we'll help make sure that that happens. We usually find that our past projects, communities from past projects, love talking with other communities. I think there's a lot of affirmation that happens there, that you are not the only one going through this. You're not the only one with your government not listening or whatever the situation might be, and just getting ideas for how to overcome that. Great. So we definitely try to make that happen.
Great.
Lisa, you have a question?
Just wanted to share that one thing that I've seen, because we all have so many Zoom meetings now, right? A lot of us do. It's sometimes difficult in really big groups to get, you know, to advance a particular topic. And so one thing that I have found using Zoom or similar platforms is that half of the meeting or a portion of the meeting is you're basically split up into subgroups where it's 4 or 5 people having a conversation, which for me, I've seen a lot more happen in those kind of subgroups or smaller groups, even though we can convene at the beginning or at the end as one big group. But that's one of the like magic things of Zoom once you get to like figure out how to do those things, right? And so it's the administrator just kind of shoots people off into these subgroups, and then at the end you guys kind of we can all reconvene. Just a recommendation. I've seen those work a lot.
That's a great point, Lisa. We were thinking about doing that for this call, but because of all these questions, we decided to opt against it. But very well noted for like a quarterly call or a monthly call.
Great.
Meredith.
Sorry, I have another question. I'm a little confused because I hear that we're going to be hearing from our scientific fellow next week. And then I thought I heard somewhere on the end, we're going to wind up choosing a science fellow. So that's where my disconnect is. Are we given a science fellow, or do we look through the list and choose one?
So your fellow is already assigned.
Got that.
Your fellow will help search for scientists for you. I think that's maybe where the confusion came in. And so your fellow is kind of a project manager.
Got it. Okay.
This cohort in particular, they actually all do have science backgrounds. It might not be a science background that's relevant to your project.
Sorry.
But they're managing the project, and they will bring in an expert who can answer the specific question directly. but they want your input on that. You're inviting somebody to be part of your project team, so your fellows are going to suggest a number of people, and if you just don't click with them, it's your right to say, no, you know, I need somebody who has more of a sense of humor, or who, I just don't understand what they're saying. Can we get somebody who can actually speak plain English? That is absolutely your right to say that. And that's where that selection piece comes in. Yeah, but that does bring me to a question that we asked the group on Friday and that we've been asking within our team. Generally, we match the fellows to the communities within staff. And we do ask, this time around, we asked our fellows based only on the issue and the geography, what do you think you would like to work on? So we do have a fellow, for example, who is doing her PhD in fire science. And she wanted very much to work on Meredith's project in fire mitigation, fire prevention. So we've asked the fellows, and a question we've had within staff is, should we be asking community leaders if they'd like to choose fellows? And if we were to do that, what information would be useful to you about those fellows? So that's a community question from us to you. If you were to do this all over again, would you like to have a say in the fellow? And what would be relevant?
I'll jump in there. I like the way you did it. It sounds like with your smaller, maybe group of fellows, you're able to, as project managers, say, you know, I know that this is something I'm good in this area, or at least have some knowledge of that area. It may be harder for me to sort through everybody's backgrounds, but also I would probably have about a 75% chance of hitting it right. I bet you all would have a better chance of getting closer to the 100% chance of getting it right, just because you know what you do and you've been through this. And then when we tell you our projects, like with the fire science, excuse me, that sounded like it was obvious to you. You know, I might not be able to dig, and it may be a lot of work for you all to provide like CVs and stuff, which maybe is overkill. I don't know. But
yeah, and sometimes we are going with kind of gut instinct. You know, we could have somebody who studies fire, but it's just a little too much the scientist to work on a fire project. We really want the fellows to help you through this process, not be the scientist.
Right.
It sounds like it's a good mixture of science and passion is just as important.
Yes, and the fellows really understand, especially after we're done with them, our community science philosophy, which is really, this comes from you as the community leaders. You understand your communities the best. You have the most knowledge about your communities and what might work or not, what the priorities are. And the fellows really get that. And they're there to also help make sure that that relationship with the scientists works out. I will say, I think this is kind of a good segue at this point to say, if you do have issues with your scientists, with your fellow, with any part of this, again, Natasha is the person that you can always call, email, whatever, and she'll help work out that problem. Because again, this is community-led. We're just helping guide and providing some of the resources to make sure that you guys can move forward on these things.
That's appreciated.
Very much so. Are there any more questions about process, what's about to happen?
Sounds good. Could we have donuts at the next meeting?
I sure hope so.
Definitely we can. It's just that we might not be able to share it. So. You want to put up that last slide, Erin? Just so people have a sense.
And I will say, yeah, I will say while we're still kind of looking at everybody, you see everybody from the Thriving Earth Exchange team here right now. So that's me, Natasha, Raj, Melissa, and Kelly. So it's the 5 of us. And we will be bringing in other people from AGU to help answer some of those questions about engagement all across the board. Let me switch back. So, with that, very exciting slide to say thank you for your time. We have kept you for 90 minutes and we really appreciate everybody being so involved. Again, if you have any troubleshooting issues related to your project team, you can contact Natasha. For everything else, it's me. And in any case, if you send it to the wrong person, we'll make sure it gets to the right person. And just to say, all 5 of us are pretty interchangeable. So if you get one of us, we should be able to answer your questions. And we will follow up with an email asking for your feedback. It's very brief, I promise, about this orientation session. And also asking for your feedback on how often and how you'd like to meet and how you think you might want to spend that microgrant money. I'm not putting any $sign on that at this point, other than to say it will be in a couple of thousands. And the survey is anonymous, so share freely, please.